On this episode of AV Week, creating a standard for global AV deployments and looking ahead to the economic forecast of 2020 and beyond. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 435, recorded Friday, December 20th, 2019. Resilient.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Kramer, AV Beyond the Box, and by Christie Digital, and by Biam.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information one last time for 2019. First and foremost, Ms. Corey Schaefer from QSC. Welcome, ma'am.
Happy New Year, Tim. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. She's probably the warmest of the five of us here, so let's say that. Corey is out on the West Coast. The rest of us are, Chuck and I.
It's the chilly 70.
Yeah. So also with us, as I mentioned, Jim, Chuck Wilson from NSCA. Welcome, sir.
How you doing? Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Ernie Beck, I get to hang out with in DC with the Future Go group and their video show. Welcome, sir.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Ernie is with Capture Design, before I forget saying that, and Integrate Baltimore. I want you to talk about that at the end here too, Ernie. Last but not least, Mr. Jonathan Blackwood this is his first time since taking over for our old buddy, Mr. Tom LeBlanc at Commercial Integrator. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So not for nothing, let's kick it off with Commercial Integrator and our friend Greg McCormick writing about 2020. It's the State of the Industry Report 2020. I like this quote, "Don't get too comfortable, kids." One of the things that Craig mentions here is the fact that AVIXA and a number of other organizations have forecasted, let's call it rosy pictures for the next couple of years. Yes, there's going to be growth in the industry. Yes, there's going to be money to be made. However, there is a but here, and a very big one. If you talk to economists, Chuck, every year at BLC, their business leadership conference has an economist. The event that I do with some other folks, the folks at PSNI, they also have an economist. These economists have been saying for a couple of years now that there is a chance for a recession between now and, let's say, 2030, 2032, depending on which one you look at. Jonathan, I think that was one of Craig's points here is don't get too comfortable. Yes, it's still a bull market, as it were, for AV, but don't get too comfortable. As you guys are talking to integrators, what preparations are they making? Or are all of them saying, you know what, it's fine, we're going to make money for the next 10 years, we're good?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that there are certainly people that are kind of the I'll believe it when I see it type of people, and I'm going to ride the wave of growth while the wave of growth is available to me, and I'll deal with the repercussions when they appear. But I think that there's a lot of people that are one of the things, recurring revenue, which I know we talk about a ton within the industry. I think that a lot of companies are trying to implement those strategies as soon as possible so that when the recession hits, they already have that upfront and they have the systems implemented, and then it's just an operating expense cost, which is a lot tougher to cut out than capital expenditure where you're bringing in a completely new system. But ultimately, one of the things that Dave Labuskis said when Craig was interviewing him for this report was that AV has now become a necessity for organizations. You can't operate without audiovisual equipment, where maybe even 10 years ago it could be argued that AV is a luxury. So I think that for the most part, it's strengthening the business, streamlining, making sure that there's not waste in any spots, and then just hoping for the best and hoping that the recession isn't going to hit us too bad, because at the end of the day, the recession will really determine what happens to companies. But if you have all your ducks in a row, then you'll have the best opportunity to kind of stay afloat during that tough time.
Chuck, as you are going around the country and having conversations with different integrators and your members? What are they telling you about this forecast?
Well, and I agree with everything Jonathan said. What we use is this electronic systems outlook more than anything. So every 6 months, our members get this, and we look at it. It's done by FMI, a research company that focuses on kind of the new construction renovation side of things. So we always look at it like we will know with a pretty good runway. We'll understand what is happening at the start end, the front end of where our projects lead us by checking out what architects, engineers, the design consultants, and everybody have on their work in progress lists, more or less. So we get this snapshot periodically like I said, every 6 months. So with that, it's become our leading indicator for the last 20 years or whatever. So when I go out and talk to people, they all have that on their desks. They all ask me about it. And the view that we have on that looks like for the next couple of years, everything will be fine based on where our business is originated from for a large part. The other thing, like Jonathan said as well, is people need what we offer now. People want what we offer. It helps them with their business. And a lot of what we're doing today helps them when they face a recessionary period in their business. So we're there to help them with the ability to communicate during those times. So I think what we're doing is we're diversifying enough, moving ourselves into these somewhat economically insensitive type markets like we talk about in the report. So from my vantage point, it looks good. And then with the caveat for now, and so our economists tell us for now we should be fine.
Yeah. Corey, that whole for now thing is important because most of us on this call, I would say all of us on this call, remember the last recession, which was roughly 10 years ago, a little bit more, and the time it took to kind of recover, right? And all of us have friends who lost businesses, lost jobs in that time period. Is there anything we can take from that 10 years ago or 11 years ago to not only, help ourselves if it does turn to this and does do a downturn, but also to provide, a little bit of help to those who were not in positions of decision-making 10 years ago, but they will be this next time around if a downturn does happen.
Yeah, I think we have to look at history. Because history helps us also look forward, right? So we have to learn from it. And I think at our company, at QSC, we're preparing in the way of, we have 3 business units and they're very, very different, right? So the system side, what's a really good indicator for us on the system side is talking and being really close to the consultant community, because those guys are working on projects that are typically 3 years and further out, maybe. So that's a really good indicator of what does the business look like. Talking to end users and what do they have planned, but we're really able to see, are they turning it up, turning it off? And being, so how do we learn from what happened before is understanding, if you look at history, that we do see a recession about every 10 to 12 years. So know that we're likely going to see something here very soon and be conservative and mindful for it. And then if you can diversify, like we have the system side that I mentioned, but we also have what we call live sound, and watching that vertical and what's happening there. And it's changed a lot to, a lot of online. We see the cinema side, which is another business unit for us. In that, it kind of is lagging what we've seen in systems. In systems, we saw a lot of consolidation happen. In cinema, we're starting to really see that now. And then also we're seeing on the cinema side that they're starting to kind of actually edge into what's sort of our systems business, because if you go to cinema today, it's not just a cinema, it's an event space, right? So it's restaurant and it's bars and it's potentially bowling alleys. And so we're seeing these 2 business units kind of overlap a bit. And we're grateful that we have these 3, because maybe when one is up and the other one's down, it helps us plan better and share multiple resources and so on. But one's coming, it's great. I love Dave Labuscas's comment as well, Jonathan, that you said is that, AV is really a necessity. We see it in retail. Retail's moving to more experience spaces versus having inventory. kind of gone are the days when you go into a place and actually walk out with something. You go into a place to play with it and then order it. It's interesting. I mean, this is all really good stuff for AV, I think.
Well, it's all things that have happened, honestly, in the last 10 years, since the last recession, that changed, right?
Yeah.
10 years ago, it was a completely different system. And those experienced designers have kind of come out of that environment.
And you hit on something. You said these experienced designers, but I was almost hearing experience. The big buzzword of the last couple of years has been we create experiences, and we really have. I think today this is the last show before the holiday, and when I think about holiday gifts, I want to give an experience. Everybody's seeking out, where they can go and have a lasting memory and experience, and that's great for us in AV.
Definitely. Ernie, I want to take a different turn with you on this. Talk about it from the forecasting and Ernie design systems, and talk about it from that aspect, but also talk about it from the work you do in trying to get young people into the industry. How do you have that conversation about whether the economy and the future of a potential job in AV, and the fact that everybody on this panel is saying, yes, the economy may take a downturn, but this is an industry that's pretty stable because, back to Mr. Labuscus, everybody needs AV.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's funny, I actually started my career in the AV industry during the last recession in 2009. So I was coming into a systems integrator, and they were getting off these large capital projects. And I think what kept them afloat, just as an aside, was leveraging more contract vehicles. We're here in the Maryland, DC area, so there's a lot of government work. And I think the thing that really helped weather that lack of construction project work, those large capital projects, was those smaller contract vehicles that they had that were doing more smaller scale projects at a larger volume. So the point is that whether it's 2009 or 2019 or 2022, right, when the next recession hits, companies have to put themselves in positions to succeed. Just like the article says, and Dave Labuscus says, they need to diversify their service offerings. If there's an area or a business unit within their offering package that they're not really focusing heavily on, maybe it's managed services, maybe it's unified communications, maybe it's digital signage. Now is the time, while the industry's hot and things are producing, to focus and put resources there, so that when the inevitability of a recession hits, those other business units can help carry their weight and spread it out. So how you translate that conversation to students, quite honestly, they're not really thinking about the recession, right? They're thinking about, how do I get a job? How do I get a career? How do I get a return on investment in my education? How do I pay my bills, right? And so for them, I think one of the benefits the AV industry can offer to students is that there is, again, not a recession-proof business model, but a recession-resilient type of industry. If you were to tell those same students, listen, if let's say you're interested in hands-on, because I work with a lot of students, or have worked with a lot of students, rather, I should say, that are, they say, I want to be hands-on. I like to build things, right? Well, you could become an installation technician in the AV industry, or you could go work in construction, let's say. But what I would say to them is that the benefit to the AV industry is it's a more recession-resilient industry than construction. Construction, when times get tough and they stop building, you stop building, right? Whereas in AV, you don't necessarily have to have a construction project for integrators to do work, right? They can be doing managed services. They could be doing ongoing support and maintenance. They could be doing any number of retrofits and projects that aren't tied to a capital budget. So I think the benefit, maybe a VIXA and a CA, these other organizations that are promoting workforce development should take, is that, I don't know how they would work that really into their marketing pitch, but I think it's a conversation that's worth having with students, because they're ultimately going to be subject to the economic ebbs and flows, just as we all are.
Yeah. Don't you think maybe this time, when there is a recession, we'll even be more resilient because of the managed services, right? I mean, many organizations have gotten that message. Chuck, do you have any data on how many of your members now are offering services?
Well, we do have the data, and I just I'm not 100% sure I trust it, because I don't think we've done a good job, Corey, of really defining what we mean by managed services versus service contracts versus a service level agreement versus help desk versus all
AV
this
as
stuff.
a service.
Yeah, AV as a service. We got so many definitions flying around that I question that, this 12% number that we use here. But 12% is our best guess about how many of our members, or the revenue produced, of the total revenue produced, 12% of it is based on recurring. The the state of the industry data, I think, Jonathan, is a little lower than that, right? So
yeah, a bit lower, and I think that we've had this conversation, and we're trying to figure it out ourselves. Is that right now managed services and AV as a service are really used interchangeably, but they're two different things. And if you ask me to tell you which is which right this second, I'm not sure that I could, because it's like I'm not sure that the industry has decided which is which yet. So I think that that's something that we're trying to better understand, so that our readers can better understand, do they want to get into managed services? Do they want to get into AV as a service? And which is which?
Yeah.
And
so
I would just jump in and, oh, sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
I was going to say, so there's that, Corey, where we're not really sure what the definitions are. What I do know is everywhere I go, that's what they're talking about. So they're thinking the exact same thing we're talking about here, is that, in order to hedge against, future downturns in the new construction, let's say, or the project-oriented side of the business, and to create that stickiness that we gain from having those managed services or embedded services with the client, it's like it just makes the best business sense. Even more important, when you look at our metrics, like in the project side of the AV space that we're in, is that at best, and especially corporate AV has this margin erosion happening big time, but at best, our anticipated GP on a gross profit on a AV installation is just a little bit over 30%. When you look at the GP stats that we have on the managed services side of that business, it's at 60%. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out that if I can tilt that scale towards the managed services as a percentage of revenue, my blended GP will tip in favor of having a much higher profit, which means that, and it makes those up and down months with projects, it makes it a little easier to get through those times. And like in a seasonal place like where I live, is we have to work really, really hard in the summer, because in the wintertime there isn't that much going on, right? So we have the seasonality and all that. So that the managed services thing just makes a tremendous amount of sense.
All right, guys. Last story here, before actually the last story of the year that I'll have to read. From our friends over at AV Network, Indeed, which is according to this article, the biggest job site in the world now, is deploying Jabra Panicast cameras across its global office network. The one thing I want to point out here, they have created a standard of Indeed inside, has created a standard where they're standardizing on the Panicast. Corey, I want to actually start with you on this. I am aware of a number of integrator friends who have worked with their clients to create global standards. Now, we'll talk about globalization here basically for the rest of the show, because one of the things that is interesting as these local clients are looking to replicate the success of a particular office or a particular install, they're working with these dealers and saying, okay, this worked really great. Now I want this everywhere, right? I want the same equipment everywhere. How do manufacturers, first and foremost, get in there and start listening and start, finding out about these initiatives and these programs where, just north of me is one of the biggest tractor manufacturers, Caterpillar, right? In Peoria, halfway between here and Chicago. They have global offices, right? Here in St. Louis, we have a MasterCard facility. This is not their local. This is not their global headquarters, but it's it's a local version or a local processing center. So somewhere, the MasterCard's headquarters, they're saying, hey, we want the same experience everywhere. How do manufacturers find out about these, sooner rather than later?
So the best way is from those companies directly themselves. And at every trade show, we're starting to see more and more end users attend those trade shows. So it's great when we can have conversations and understand what they're doing. And many of the large enterprise companies are developing standards. And so getting in early and finding out what that process is like, and it's typically, they have a lab, they have to do proof of concept, they start talking about their geography, their footprint, where all their locations are, the accessibility to equipment in all those locations, because they want to work with manufacturers and potentially integrators that can serve them all over the globe. And so, getting in early, we're getting a lot of those leads directly from the trade shows like Infocom and ISE. They have lots of end users attending those, which is really great. And they want to replicate the experience for sure, but they're trying to reduce variables. Supporting AV, and AV gets such a bad rap about, this and that is wrong or whatever, but a lot of it's because there's so many variables. But if you've locked down a standard and you've got all this, you know exactly what the equipment is, it's certainly easier to support it, right? Because you can have spares, you can, there's just so many reasons why standards, make good sense. So talking to them directly is great. And then another one is making sure that you as a manufacturer have great relationships with your integrator partners so that you approach these end users through a partnership. Because when you walk into an end user with your integrator partner, they see that and they realize that they're close to the manufacturer maker and the partner who's going to install and support it.
Yeah.
So it's twofold.
Chuck, when a dealer walks in and has that conversation, like Corey said, what are some of the steps in creating that standard, for your dealers and for your members, but for an integrator walking in and saying, okay, these are the steps that we need, and this is what we need to know from you, the client, before we can really, make a good effort in creating a real global standard.
Yeah. So this is where our members are kind of shifting from, being certainly all about the product, but all about the experience and the solution and being problem solvers. So I think right now is that the real challenge is to ask the right questions, to really become this vertical market solution specialist, if you will. So that whenever they have the opportunity to drive that, like Corey said, get out in front and to drive that specification or that standard, is we've got to truly understand their business and what they're trying to solve and how they're trying to operate and what the desires are and what the absolute minimums are for them. But we have seen this same thing happen, is that our domestic integration community is being almost drug over to other parts of the world. I don't think they have intentions of doing that from a primary expansion motive, but I think what they're having to do to become that preferred solution provider is, number one, is to really, really learn all about the business of that particular vertical market that they're in, so they know how to apply the solution. But two is to be able to partner or to respond no matter where in the globe that end user has a need for this system. So I guess the demand right now is based on, no matter where our executives go, anywhere around the world, they want to walk into that building, into that room, into this type of room, and have it be identical to where they were just at before that, or where their corporate headquarters is. So we're seeing that. Not everybody is successful at this, I might add. So it's kind of like farming around here, Tim, is that, they always say that the best way to make $1 million farming is to start out with $2 million, right? And so a lot of our members have lost money by going in with this all excited kind of, we're going to take what we do around the world to really, kind of get a dose of reality that they probably should have had a really good partner, like what Corey was saying, is to team up and partner with your vendors, or to create a network like PS&I did and others. Is it makes more sense to understand what you're getting yourself into before you lose all that money, let's say.
Absolutely. Ernie, as you're creating this standard and as you're working with your clients, what are some of the things that you have to know right? What are the Chuck mentioned, asking the right questions. What are those questions that you need from your clients?
Yeah, sure. So what you first, I think there's, and I've created global AV standards for a handful of clients, both on the integration and on the consultant side. And I think the first thing you need to ask are the right stakeholders in the conversation, right? Because you could have somebody who is solely focused on the project. You could have another stakeholder who is focused on the IT and the support. And you could have another stakeholder involved in the business application, right? So even within an organization globally, it's going to vary office to office of what those business operations are and what the needs to support them are going to be. So you could, from a hardware perspective, you could really aim to have a very consistent hardware experience from where the touch panel is in the room to what type of TVs we are specifying so they can buy in bulk. And as Corey said, keep spares. But there may be a call center involved, right? And that call center may be using a very specific type of call center product that they do their trainings on. So you can't just make this a Zoom room because everything else is a Zoom room, right? You have to be sensitive to the different business units. So having the right stakeholders is, I think, first and foremost key. And then understanding you're not going to design a system and a set of standards that pleases everybody, but you're going to have to make decisions on what are the most common denominators within this system. What are the main core functions that these need to do? And then, all the way through documenting that. Because to me, at the end of the day, a global standard is only as good as it is documented. That becomes the manual.
And followed. Right, because you could document it and then no one looks at it.
Yeah, and I think that's really key is having the right players at the table, knowing what goals they want to accomplish with this, knowing what platforms. And I'll tell you, one of the challenges is when both of those conversations happen during a capital construction project, because you have to learn how to decouple the conversation around this particular build with the idea of how are we creating new enterprise standards. And sometimes clients don't understand the distinction. They think, well, we're going to go build this 100,000 square foot facility. Now is a good time for us to decide on Skype or Zoom. Well, not quite. You should have decided on Skype or Zoom probably 6 months to 12 months ahead of time, right? And this is one service that my firm offers is not only the traditional build consulting, but also the UC advisory side of things, right? So how can we get in there 6 months, 12 months ahead of time, workshop the transition with small groups from one platform to another, and that way that will inform our decisions going into a rollout of a new office, and thus inform new spaces in the future.
Yeah. Jonathan, as we wrap up here, what is the danger of an organization going down this whole global platform, this whole global standard road? Because one of the things that we've seen in the past is, the old line, if it plays in Peoria, it'll be fine in New York, right? Really old saying. I think it's older than me. What is the danger here of putting together something that is fine for the corporate headquarters, but then you get to the field office in, I don't know, Manchester, or the field office in Amsterdam, and it just doesn't work that way. Number one, what's the danger? Then number two is how do our integrator friends fix it in the field? I guess the best way to put that.
Yeah, I think that the danger is quite simply just biting off more than the entire organization that you're trying to outfit can chew. So essentially, every AV integrator, for the most part, is a creative type. And when they go into a single space, they want to outfit it and make it, just sing for that specific client. And I think when we talk about globalization, we're talking about the difference between a handmade, handcrafted, whittled down from a tree that you cut down yourself, wood chair, versus mass producing that same chair. There are going to be quality issues that you need to essentially bring down. So if I go into a spot and it's just a single build, I'm going to try and give them some bells and whistles, some things that they can really do unique things with. Like, let's say it's a collaboration system. I'm going to really try to implement some capabilities that are top line capabilities. Now, to Ernie's point, if I'm doing it and I know that this is going to be globalized and it's going to go out to a bunch of different buildings with their own unique considerations, I need to pare that down to the bare bones of what everybody in the organization needs. And the unique aspect of it needs to a certain extent, come out, because a lot of times that unique aspect is what's raising the cost and raising the complexity of the build. So you need to know that whatever you're documenting is something that someone else in another country is going to be able to implement themselves. So if you start saying, it has to be exactly this size, it has to be exactly oriented this way, it has to have exactly these capabilities, you're just creating more potential pain points and potential mistakes for whoever is going to carry that out in another place. So what I would say is, again, to Ernie's point, get in touch with the right stakeholders that are making decisions for the entire company, find out what everybody in the company needs, and then design a system that does all of that without going too far above and beyond, as blasphemous as that sounds, that, in 6 different locations, there's going to be 6 different problems with 6 different aspects of the solution. So it's simplify, streamline, and make sure that there is as little room for error as possible while still delivering on what the client needs. And I think for every AV project, that's something that, it's that constant struggle between what the client actually needs and what I can deliver for the client. And a lot of times we want to try and deliver something really cool so that they're extremely impressed with what we've done. But in this type of scenario, it's as simple as delivering what they need so that they're happy with what we've done.
I'm going to share
what's really cool. Sorry, I'll just say what's really cool to clients is when it works from office to office to office.
Yeah.
Right.
It's no longer how many bells and whistles I can. Nice to haves, go bye-bye. It is how can we create a product that can be rolled out, and when it works in one place and then works in another, it's magic. Just like AV used to be with your single builds.
And I was just going to share a pain point from a manufacturer's point of view regarding standards as well. And it does involve this comment of pulling in all the stakeholders, including the purchasing side of the end user, because we worked to get into a particular large company's standard, and it was great. But what that created then was they thought this kind of the shopping list, it was easy, and they went to places like CDW to try to buy QSC equipment. And so it became a real bottleneck because we don't sell our solutions that way. We sell through qualified integrators. So we learned a good lesson there that how they buy and where they're going to buy also has to be part of the standard created.
And I'll just throw out there that it's called standard for a reason. It's not above standard. It's not super standard. It's standard. You want something that everybody can implement.
All right. That'll be a good place to stop for us and for the year. We do have 2 more programs coming out, and we'll talk about that in a second. Thank you all so very much for spending your Friday before Christmas with us. Ms. Corey Schaefer, how do people find you and or QSC?
So QSC.com, you can find me on all the social channels. And then hopefully some of you will be attending the upcoming ISE show in February. And you can find me at the QSC stand in Hall 1, stand 1F120.
Yep, absolutely. We'll be by there as well. Mr. Blackwood, thank you, sir, and congratulations in person for taking over the reins. How do people find you or Commercial Integrator?
Head over to commercialintegrator.com. You can find me at Blackwood Tweets or reach out to me, jonathan.blackwood@emeraldexpo.com. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to really sinking my teeth into the industry and trying to help our readers build their businesses the best they can.
Absolutely. Mr. Wilson, thank you, sir. I appreciate your time as always, sir. How do people get a hold of you or an SCA?
The easiest way is just nsca.org. And then we got the foundation's website. We got igniteyourcareer.org, which is really cool, which is that talent management workforce development website we have. So a bunch of different websites is the best way to get a hold of me.
Very good. My buddy Kelly Perkins helps out with
yeah.
that. Check that out, please. Mr. Beck, I left you for last because I also want you to talk about Integrate Baltimore. So how do people find you, first of all, and Capture Designs, but also what about Ignite or Integrate Baltimore?
Yeah, so you can find my consulting firm at capturedesigngroup.com. And then you can also find our local nonprofit here in Baltimore at integratebaltimore.org. And we are trying to raise awareness about fulfilling careers in the pro AV industry. So I am on social media, but I'm not very good at it. So you can look me up, but you better just go to websites, actually.
Very good.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, for Tim Albright, don't go on to the Twitters. It's the Friday before Christmas, and the Bears have been out for like 2 months. So I've got the Blues. The Blues are still the defending Stanley Cup champions, but right now it's still football and it's painful. Go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. I mentioned the fact that this is our last one. This is our last news program of the year. We do have 2 more programs coming out. Next week, we will release what we call our best of. So these are the most listened to, the most downloaded, the most shared, the most replied to, the most yelled at episodes of 2019. And the week after that, we will do our year in review, year in preview, where we get people smarter than me. Actually, Kelly Perkins was one of them, to talk about the biggest stories of 2019 and give us a pontification on what they think will happen in 2020. So stay tuned. We got some more stuff coming out. Also, while you're at the website, check out our supporters section. These are folks who help us financially, help us bring you AV Week, Resi Week, all the other shows we do, and our coverage of ISE 2020, and QSC is one of those, and we thank them for their support. So all of that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thank you so very much for listening and for watching this year and the years before. And thanks for watching and listening next year. So that is all the time we have for AV Week.